Hello everybody and welcome back to Potluck Economics. In this video I am going to be showing you how to connect to the Binance API and how to basically be pulling your account data and to retrieve it and to turn it into something valuable. There's a lot of in-depth work that goes into this, and I would kind of say this was kind of advanced on the programming sphere, but I'm going to try and dumb it down and break it down as easy as possible. But what we're really going to be building in this tutorial video is we're going to be building a asset breakdown donut chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull on our data from the Binance API, we're going to retrieve our assets, and then we're going to turn that asset into valuable data that can be displayed as an interactive graph that we can see right here. So as you can see, I have a bunch of different assets that are on my Binance account right now, and we can basically click on these or bring them in, bring them out, and it shows this. We won't be building everything else out. This is on my own personal application where users can basically log in, put their API keys, and it shows useful account information. But for this video, we're really just going to be focused on building out the donut chart alone. And eventually we will, I guess through my Udemy course that I've been working on, we'll get to a point where we will be building out something of this scale. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, let's just jump into it. Like I said, we're going to be working within the Binance Python API. What I have here is the documentation. I suggest really looking into this because there's a lot of useful information in the documentation that I think that you guys will find valuable. But basically to connect to it, you need API keys, and we're going to need to bring those in via client. And I'll show you guys how to do that and how to get everything set up. But yeah, so let's just get into it. I guess to start off, concerning the API keys, of course you're going to need a Binance account. So either create one, log on to your current Binance account, and then once you log in, I guess on your profile to the left, you'll see something that looks like this, and it says API. You just want to click on this, follow the documentation to create API keys, and then you'll get a public and a secret API key. And we're going to be using that throughout this video to build our application. So with all that said, let's just get into it. So what I would recommend before we really get started is to create two files, right? This is going to look a little different because I'm going to be working within Jupyter Notebook so that I can show data while I am programming this out, because I think it will be useful as I am educating this course. But for you, you most likely won't be within Jupyter Notebook. You'll most likely just be within a normal Python folder. So it's going to be relatively straightforward. The only thing which I want to suggest is if you are outside of Jupyter Notebook, I would suggest creating a folder to house the project, to create two files for you to basically get this to work. One file I would name keys, and this is where you're going to put your public key and your secret key. The reason for doing this is as you push your project to GitHub, you don't want to show your API keys. So whenever you are pushing your projects, make sure that you don't include your keys.py file, but you are more than welcome to include everything else. This is just proper programming practice so that you're not showing your personal information, and so that nobody can connect to your Binance account, because that would be really bad. But with all that said, what I have here is the actual file that we're going to be working within, and I'll show you how to bring in keys and everything else. But I guess to get started, we got a few imports to do, so I will run through that with you real quick. They're relatively straightforward. We're going to have, I think, 3 imports to do this project. So we'll do a pip install, and then we'll do Python, and then dash, and then Binance. As you can see, I've already installed it, but for you, it should be installing right now. We're also going to do a pip install, and then we're going to do Plotly. So run that command, and then we're going to also be installing pandas. So we'll do a pip install, and then we'll do pandas. All right, and that's going to be for our data frames. So as soon as you're done with all that, we can get started, and we'll start bringing in some of these imports that we just made. So to start off, we'll bring in Binance. So from binance.client, we want to import client. All right, so we're going to be using this extensively. We also want to bring in our plotting capabilities. So we'll import plotly.offline as PYO. So that's what we're naming it. We're going to be naming that import as PYO just to shorten things up. The next thing that we're going to be bringing in is Plotly graph objects. So we'll do an import Plotly graph objects as go. And the last thing is we need pandas for data frame. So we'll import pandas as PD. All right, so to get started, we're going to need to clarify our client. So we will call this client, and we're going to make it equal to, of course, client. And we need to bring in our two API keys. So in order to do this, what we're going to do is, if you follow my instructions as far as naming another file keys, you want to bring in that file. So up above, we will do an import, and you basically want to point to that file, so it'd just be like keys. But because I'm working within Jupyter Notebook, I can't actually do this. So I have it clarified at the top. But basically, once you have that, you can type within here keys. After you do your import, keys, and then you'll do .api key. And it should bring it in. If you labeled it the same as mine, you could label it anything, it really doesn't matter, but all you're doing is referencing it. So another keys, and then a secret key, and that should be able to get you the information that you need. Because I don't have that clarified, I have it actually up above, which you can't see because I'm trying to hide it. But this is what I'm going to do, is just API key and API secret. So that's going to allow us to call on our information. So with that, there's one more thing that I want to do. I just want to format our pandas so that we could basically work within floats, and it just formats it really nicely, especially for what we're going to be doing here for displaying data within the plot. This is going to be used later on, but if we do pd.set option, and this is kind of a weird one to memorize, but we're going to do a float and then format, and then we are going to call it a parentheses F, and then at the very end of it, after we do all that, we're going to add a dot format at the end. So that's going to be useful later on. And with that, we can get started. So to start off, we're going to basically break down this problem into different functions. I guess to just make sure that we are connected to the client, to Binance API, we'll run a quick check real quick. So let's just do a print. And within this print, we want to basically do client, and then we want to basically ping. So it's going to be client.ping open parentheses. And if we run this, okay, and just to make sure that we have this working, we should get returned an empty parentheses, right? So that means that we're actually connected to the Binance API, so that's good, okay? So we actually are all ready to get set up. So like I said, we're going to break this down into different functions. So the first function that we're going to do is just going to be grabbing our Binance data. So we'll call this grab Binance, and then we'll call it balance, okay? That's what we're going to name this function. And the first thing that we need to do is we got to pull out the account. So we'll do account equals client.get account, okay? So I guess the reason why I have Jupyter Notebook up like this is so that I can actually show you what's going on, and so that as we build this out, you can see how the data is actually looking, because this makes the whole development process a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to return, and then I'm going to return account, and we're going to do another print, and I'm going to be doing this extensively along the way just to kind of show you how we are formatting everything. So what I'm going to print out is the function that we have up here, and this is actually going to show us what is being returned, which is account, right? So as you can see, we have a bunch of different information right here. It's really hard to see, but basically if we look into it, we can see that it's made up of asset, BTC, free, and then some numbers at the end, and then it has locked, and then some numbers at the end, right? So this is a terrible format to work within. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this API pool into a data frame so we can actually format it and see what we are actually working within. So I'm going to call this a clean data frame. You can really name it anything you want, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be calling on PD, which is pandas, and then I actually want to reference data frame, and within that we're going to basically be pulling out count, and we want the balance. balances. So how I find this is if we look within the original data, we could see balances right here, and it returns this list. So that's really what we're trying to retrieve right now. So if I, instead of returning account, if I return clean data frame and we run this one more time, we will get a better idea of what we are actually working within. So as you can see, whenever we pull on data from Binance, especially in relation to the account, we get all of the assets back. So we get all of the free assets and all of the locked. There's a bunch of zeros. So a lot of these assets, I don't have anything in them. There's no investments at all. So we get back 168 assets in total. Some have some money in it and some don't. As we can see, Stratus has 14 coins within it. That might be some information that we want, where all of the zeros, that's information that we really don't want. So what we need to do first is we need to basically format this data so that we get rid of all of the zeros, and we're only left with important information that we can actually use. Stuff that actually has a balance within it. So we're going to create a loop here. So we're going to do for index in row in clean data frame. We want to basically iter rows. So we're going to iterate from each row, and we're going to call a if function, right? So we're going to do if float. So the reason why I'm bringing in a float right now is because what we have here, whenever we're looking at this data frame, is all of these are strings. So we basically need to turn this free asset into a float so that we can get the value of what this is actually displaying. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the float, like I said, and then we're going to do for each row, and we're only calling on free because that's the only relevant information that we need. We don't need locked. We don't need anything else. So from that, we are going to say if it is less than 0.01, we want to basically run clean data frame, and we want to drop that index, and we want to basically run in place, which just means that it actually goes through. So that's what we're going to do so that we can actually get a better idea of what we're working with. And as you can see, I made a mistake. I put two parentheses right here. I got ahead of myself. So that should run, and I guess if we just run this again, we can see what we actually get returned. And as you can see, a lot of our assets have disappeared. So we are only left with assets that have a balance larger than 0.01. So that's what we're doing here. After we basically break down each free asset, we are calling if it is less than 0.01. We want to call on clean data frame. We want to drop that index, and we are basically certifying it with in place equals true. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is whenever we're working within Binance data, a lot of it at the end has to be labeled BTC or USD at the end. So what we're going to do, this is going to be in prep of basically turning all these assets into one uniformal balance, because right now we can see that we have Civic at 700, Stratus at 14, but these are all at different prices, so this really isn't useful us to see what their actual value is worth. So like I said, what we're going to do first is we're going to rename the assets, okay? So we're going to call on clean data frame again, and what we're calling on is we're going to call on asset, and this is going to be equal to clean data frame again, and we are calling on asset again. And what we want to do, because we turn all of that into float, we want to turn asset back to a string. So just to make sure that this is labeled correctly and not an object or anything else, we're open to a call of asType. And what asType does is it turns a column in a data frame or a row in a data frame into a different variable. So for example, you can call it a string, you can turn it into a float, or you can turn it into an int. For our purposes, we're going to turn it into a string, and what we want to add to the end of the string of each asset is we want to add BTC. So if we run clean data frame again, and if we look at what we get returned, we can see that we get all of our assets with BTC at the end. That's perfect. That's what we're looking for. So the only thing which I don't like is the indexes really aren't relevant to us. These numbers don't mean anything. So what we're going to do to replace that is we're going to set the index. So we'll do clean data frame dot set index. And we want to set index to asset. And remember that in place because that certifies it. So we'll do in place equals true. And that will run it, and that will do everything that we need. And if we actually look into this, we have locked. We don't need this information. Those are all zeros, so that isn't relevant to us. So let's also just make our data frame look really nice. So we'll do clean data frame equals clean data frame dot drop, and we're going to get rid of locked. And we want to make sure that we are focused on the access of 1. That will actually make sure that we are getting rid of the column. 0 is a row, access is a column. So that's what that's going to be doing. If we run this one more time, we can see what we get returned. We can see that the assets are formatted nicely. We don't have locked anymore. That's all purged. And then we're only left with free. So we have the asset right here and what its equivalent is as far as what is free within our portfolio right now. So, like I said, and I referenced right above, we don't need this because we need to basically bring all of these assets into a same value. What we're going to focus on is translating all these assets into Bitcoin, okay? So, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to bring in a new code. So, and what we're going to do is we're going to be basically bringing in a new function. So, within this, we're going to call this function grab BTC equivalent, okay? So, we'll do def grab BTC, and then we'll call it equivalent, okay? And this function, we're going to call on prices equals client dot get all tickers. And what we will do with this is we will call clean data frame. This isn't anything yet, but we will make that equal to pd dot data frame. And this is going to basically be bringing in prices to format this and make it look all pretty. So with that, let's just see what we get returned, and we'll clean it all up in 1 second. So if we do return clean data frame, and I'll do a print, and we will print this function right now, which is grab BTC equivalent, and we run this, we can see what we get returned. So we are getting returned all of the values of all of the different assets. So if we look at the symbol, and this is why we had to rename it, because if we dive into the documentation, we can see what we actually are getting returned here, which is the symbol and the price. So we're just showing the equivalent. So that's what we're actually doing with this. So if we go back into it, we're seeing what the Bitcoin balance is for each one of these assets, but it's not actually doing anything other than that. We aren't multiplying this by our current portfolio. That's what we will be doing next. But before we do that, let's just make sure that this data lines up, because right now we don't have the index labeled correctly, and that's going to be relevant for us to actually be able to compare these two. So in order to do that, let's just set the index, which we have already done before, which we'll just call on our data frame, and then we're going to set index, and we're going to call symbol, because that's the information that we want to be our index, and then we will make sure that in place equals true. So in place equals true. Okay, so that is done. And now we're going to run on a new function, okay? And we have all of the assets aligned and looking nice, where the indexes are the same. The prices look great. So this is the Bitcoin equivalent. This is just the actual asset amount that we have right now. What I want to do is I don't want Bitcoin to be the final variant. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these data frame, which shows our current makeup as far as how many coins of each asset we have. We're going to multiply this by its Bitcoin equivalent, okay? And then we're going to multiply this by its Bitcoin USD equivalent to get our ultimate USD value of each asset, right? So that's the way that we're going to be breaking this down. So in order to do that, I'm going to be calling on a new function, which is going to be def, and we'll grab Bitcoin. So grab BTC, and for this function, we're going to do a relatively simple command of prices equals client get symbol ticker. And what we can put in this is we can basically clarify what symbol we want to actually call on. So if we type in symbol, we can make it equal to a string, and for this we will put our asset, so BTC, and then for this true USD, which will be the true USD value. All right, so other than that, let's turn this into a data frame. So we'll do clean and df, as we know, clean data frame equals PD data frame. And then we want to basically put prices in here so that we're formatting it correctly, and we want the index to be 0. So this is just calling the first column. That's what 0 does. And if you call 1, it'll make it the second column. 2 makes it the third. But for our purposes, we'll just call it on that one. So with that, let's just return what we have right now. So we will return a clean data frame before working further, because I like to break this down so you can see what's actually going on. So let's just print out grab BTC, and then we're going to run this, and we're going to see what we get returned. So as you can see, we have the symbol, we have the price, and then we have the actual price of Bitcoin. So BTC, and then this is the price. So let's just get rid of the index right now. We want to clean up the index a little bit. So that's what we'll do next. So we'll do a clean data frame dot set index, and we will set symbol as the new index and in place as true, as we already know. So in place equals true. And the last thing that we want to do is we want to basically make sure that we are turning prices into a float. So for a clean data frame, we want to make sure that this is equal to float, and we want clean data frame, and we're only wanting to turn prices into a float. And the last thing that we're doing is we're going to do another parentheses and 0. So what this does is we're basically, whenever you first break it down, it's showing these two, and then once you add the 0, it's only showing the number itself, and then that's going to get returned, and we're going to actually get the right setup for how this is going to look. So that's awesome. So if we run this again, we can see what we're going to get returned. My mistake, it's not prices, it's price. So once I fix that and I get rid of the S, you can see that we're only getting the asset back, which is perfect because that's all we need, and it's turned as a float. All right, so what we're going to do is, next thing that we want to do is we want to basically bring all of this together, okay? That's what we're going to do in this next function. So I'm going to insert a new code block, and we'll call this something long. So I just like to make sure these are all named correctly. So we will call this function compare BTC equivalent and Binance balance. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. We're comparing the BTC equivalent and Binance balance. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to do BT symbol is going to equal, and all we're going to do is we're going to grab BTC equivalent. Okay, so we're pulling on this information right here, which I have I guess highlighted. Okay, that's what we're first pulling in. All right, the next thing that we want to do is we want to basically pull in the other two. So we'll do Binance balance is going to equal grab Binance balance, and then the last thing is going to be BTC value is going to equal grab BTC. All right, so that's all the information that we're going to need for doing this function. So let's just make this a filtered, and we'll do this. A filtered data frame is going to equal BTC symbol dot join Binance balance. Okay, so after we do that, let's just return this, and we'll see what we actually have here. And we're going to continue to do the return and edit, return, edit, just so that you guys are learning what's going on in the inner workings. So if I do a print, and we'll do compare the long one, we can actually get it returned. We can see what we actually have here. So what we did with the filtered data frame, whenever we join these two data frames, is we basically made it so that we have the free, which is up above, and we joined it with prices, right? So for a lot of these, they show NA, and that's because a lot of these don't have anything as we set up in the first section, and then there's some that actually do. So that's going to be relevant information. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to drop the NAs because, like I said, they're not going to be valuable because we don't have any assets if it has an NA, right? So let's do that next. And for that, we'll do filter data frame is going to equal filter data frame dot drop NA. So that's relatively simple. So if we run this again, it's going to get rid of all the NAs. That's a really neat command to clean everything up. So that looks perfect, right? That's all the information that we really need so far, okay? So the next thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that all of these are transferred into the right format, because right now they could be a string, they could be anything. So we want to make sure that prices and free are actually floats so we can multiply them later on. So what we're going to do is we're going to do filter data frame, and we're going to be calling in a double parentheses right now because we're going to be calling on two sections. So we want to call on price, and then the next thing that we want to call on is free, all right? So we want to make sure that this is equal to basically the same thing. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm going to come over here, I'm going to paste it, and then we just want to make sure that the as type is going to be float. So we've already worked with that before, and all we're doing, like I said, is we're just going to make sure that all those are floats. That is done. So the next thing that we want to do is that we want to multiply the price by the BTC value. So what we're going to do is we're going to do filter data frame, and because this doesn't actually exist, it's going to add it on. So what we're calling right here is we're going to call on BTC, and then we're going to call it value is going to be equal to filter data frame, and we want to call on price. And what we will be doing here is we're going to be multiplying it by filter data frame, and we're going to call that free. So all we're going to be doing with this line of code is we're multiplying price and free to get BTC value, right? So if I return this again, we can see what's going to happen. And as you can see, we have a new column here with BTC value where we have, the digits multiplied and everything's looking perfect, all right? So let's just continue on. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're bringing out USD value. So we're going to basically be following the same format where we're going to do filtered data frame. And what we will be calling on is a new column, which is going to be USD value, which is going to be equal to filtered data frame, and this is going to be taking in the new column that we just made, which is BTC value. And what we want to do with this is we want to do a dot multiply, and we want to multiply it by a float. And within this float, we want to pass in our BTC value, which is right up above, which we called right here, if you guys remember. So that's what we're doing here is we're taking this BTC value, we're multiplying it by this number right up here, and we're going to be naming it USD value, right? So if we run this real quick, we can run it and we'll see what we're actually going to get. So we get the USD value, and for a lot of these, we can see that they're really low-end USD value. A lot of them we really don't want because that's a lot of unneeded information. So what we're going to do is we're going to purge this one more time, and we're going to add a limit. So in order to do this, we're going to basically do filter data frame one more time. This is going to be equal to filtered data frame again, and what we're going to pass in this is we will do a box, and we'll do filtered data frame dot USD underscore value has to be greater than $3, right? So that's all we're doing here, where we're calling the data frame within the data frame of USD value. We want it to be larger than $3, and if we run that again and we print it, we can see that we're going to get a lot more purged, where we're only left with maybe 5 or 6 assets, which are higher than $3, which is just perfect for what we need here, okay? So with all that said and done, we are ready to actually plot this thing, right? So let's get into the plotting now that we've broken down all the data. So in order to get this all set up, we're going to need to call this last function that we just made. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to basically bring in a new code block, and we will get set up on the actual graphing mechanics, okay? So to do this, we'll just call this df, which is going to be our final data frame, is going to be equal to compare. It's going to be the long one, BTC equivalent, and Binance balance, which is just calling on that function to get that information. So whenever we're working within Plotly, we cannot pass through data frames, really. It's better to pass through lists. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this information into a list again. So I got a value. Values, which is going to be a blank list, and we will use this to pass everything through. In order to do this successfully, we're going to create a loop. So we'll do a for loop of market cap in data frame USD value. And what we want to call within this is a unique, and this is just proper programming practice as far as just making sure that we aren't taking down multiple information that is the same, though I don't see that happening, but whatever. Okay, so for values, which is just calling on this blank list above, we are going to add to it, which is just saying append, and we want to bring in a int, because like I said, whenever we're working within Plotly, we can only basically work within ints or floats, so that's what we're going to do here, and we're going to call market cap. So that's perfect, and what we're doing here is for this loop, every time that we get to each line, we are appending it into the list, and we're turning it into an int. So that's going to be useful. We got to do the same thing with the labels, which is going to be labels equals another blank list. And then within this blank list, we're going to follow the same format of creating a for loop. So for name and df dot index and then dot unique. Like I said, it's just proper programming practice. We want to do labels, and we want to append it. So we'll do labels, and then we're going to append a string of name. So that's all we're doing here. Now we can actually work on formatting the actual graph here. So if you guys have worked extensively within Plotly or Dash, their format's relatively the same. You trace out the values, and then you add the layout, and then you basically push it into the final graph. So I guess to start off, we'll start off with the trace. So we'll make sure that the trace is equal to a go.py. And within this, we got to declare a few different things. To basically plot a pie graph, it's relatively straightforward. All we need to do is we got to basically say what are the labels going to be. So labels are going to equal what I named up there in that list, which is going to be labels. The next thing is going to be the actual value. So values is going to equal values. And then we want to basically do a domain equals, and what this is going to do is this kind of sets up the x-axis. So we will just do an x, and we will put in a list of 0 and 0.48, and that should be good. And then the last little bit of information is hover information. So we add hover info is going to equal, and we will make that equal to label plus value. So that just means whenever we hover over the graph, we get the label and the value. And then whenever we are basically doing a donut chart, we also have to say how large of a circumference we want for the hole. So we will do hole is going to equal like a 0.4. You could play with this, make the hole bigger or smaller, whatever suits your fancy. So yeah, that's all you need to basically graph the pie chart. Relatively simple after we broke down all the data. Now all we have to do is just set up the layout of the actual graph itself. So we'll just do a layout equals go dot layout, and that's going to basically have a bunch of information in it. So let's just say the title. What do we want to title this? We could title it Binance total asset breakdown. That's what we're going to name it. Now if we go to title font, we can add to that I'm not going to worry about that because you can add title font. You can add to the legend, make the font different. I'm going to actually make the background different. So if I go to paper and then I go to BG color equals, I can make it black, for example. So that's what I'll do, just to make it dark. I like dark. So that's going to be black. We'll just continue on. If we want to add an image, I can show you guys how to do that. I'll probably do that at the end, but that's all we really need for the layout. Let's see, what else do I want to add here? Okay, so I just did a quick copy and paste as far as the layout's concerned. All of the layout really is in reference to is styling. So all I'm doing here is I'm titling it, Binance Total Breakdown. I'm making the background color black. The title font, I'm making it 30. The color is going to be white. The legend, I want the legend to be white because we have a black background. Annotations, I want the color to be white. The size to be 20. I didn't really clarify the fonts, but you could do that. And then, text in the middle, I want it to say portfolio, and then x-axis is going to be 0.19, y-axis is 0.5, and basically all you're saying is where do you want portfolio to land, and you'll kind of see how that is going to be used in a second. But layout's relatively straightforward, really simple to use. You can go into Plotly and you can get an idea. It's pretty easy to pick up on, but other than that, all we have to do is just clarify everything. So we'll just do a data equals, and then we're just going to be passing in our trace here, because that's going to be the only thing that we're going to be bringing in for data. And then all we have to do is just bring in the fig. So we do fig equals go.figure. And within this, we're going to be bringing in data. And this is going to be equal to, of course, data. And then the last thing is layout is going to be equal to layout. Simple enough. And then all we have to do is finalize all of our hard work. We'll do a pyo.plot, and then we're going to basically be bringing in our fig. So, moment of truth. Let's run this last thing. Let's see what we get here, and we'll see if this little handy graph plot pops up. It's looking promising. And lo and behold, drum roll, we have it. It landed right where we wanted. Everything's looking nice. This is how you really break down Binance data. It's relatively simple enough. It's a little intimidating because of all the different loops that we had to go and how we had to clean all of the data. But in retrospect, compared to making orders or test orders or anything else, this is really on the easier end as far as working within the Binance API. And it's a get your feet wet, kind of learn a little bit as far as working within finance and Python's concerned. So like I said, if you guys enjoy this video, I'd appreciate it if you like or subscribe. I'm planning on releasing more educational videos as far as programming is concerned. If you have any questions, I have an application which I'll also link in the description down below. I put a lot of my tools as I build them out. I publish them here, so you can find a lot of them here if you kind of want to see if you can do some of the projects that I've been working on. I'll show you another one that I worked on, which is order books, which you guys might find interesting. And what this one does is it basically refreshes automatically. It's basically calling on price data. So you can type in any asset over here. So you type in any asset. So for example, Neo BTC, and then you're going to be brought up with two graphs. It takes a little bit to load because we're grabbing a lot of data here. But if you just give it a second. So once it loads, we have below, this is going to be our bubble chart, and this is order books. So whenever you have larger orders coming in, it shows up as a bigger bubble, and it shows where the order is placed at what price. So this is pretty good to see the fluctuations of when whales are jumping in the market, at what points within the graph. Up above, this is a candlestick chart partnered with a heat map. So if we actually zoom into a specific area, we can see what we're actually working within. And then for the below, we can see that for hot, it's pretty self-explanatory, but the heat chart shows where more trades are coming in and at what points, and then the candle chart is just a normal candle chart, and you can basically move it around and pull on different data, and it just gives you a pretty good idea of where all the orders are coming in. If it's higher as far as green's concerned, there's a lot of trading going on right there. Where blue, dark purple means that there really isn't much resistance at those levels. There isn't many trades that are being fulfilled at those levels. So this is just one of the many graphs that I've been working on and building out. But like I said, if you have any questions about programming, I have a blog within here also that you can get to. You can post code directly into these blogs, and you can ask questions as far as programming is concerned. And I have sections as far as Python, JavaScript, Java, C++, PHP, or anything else. So if you have any questions, jump onto my app, create an account, and then ask away, and I'll definitely get back to you. That's going to be the best way to contact me. I also have a Discord, which will be in the description down below. But like I said, subscribe, stay up to date. I'm going to be pushing out more tutorial videos, and I've been working extensively on a data science building dashboard for finance course that will be released on Udemy soonish. It's pretty intense, but I'm working there. I'm getting as many videos out as I can and just building out a really in-depth course. So like I said, look forward with that. But at the end of the day, you are your own investor. I hope you guys have a wonderful day trading the market and programming and building graphs and everything else.